Sorry.
Pues de nuevo, muy
Once again, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your presence here in this long working day. I am Elena Valdez. I'm the General Vice Director of Development of Sustainability from the State Secretary of Tourism. I am going to talk about a general concept of accessibility, about physical accessibility, but also about tourist product accessibility. We will define universal accessibility as a condition to be compiled of all tourist services, assets, products, and processes, and all objects, tools, in order to be understanding in an autonomous and natural way. We need a design strategy. The concept of accessible tourism, tourism for all, it is based in the principle that tourism is a fundamental social right. It's opportunities equality for disabled people, but also for non-disabled people, for leisure and tourism, because this is fundamental for the life quality. Tourism is about the whole products of. There are some temporary disabled people, as pregnant women, but also permanent disabilities, elderly people, families with children. To summarize, accessibility is breaking the obstacles to access infrastructures, transport, and this doesn't guarantee accessibility for people with disabilities, but also those with some temporary limits. Pregnant women, elderly people, people carrying luggage. In tourist activities, it's very important to accomplish accessibility in every environment. So the idea of accessibility in the touristic chain has a lot of sense. I am going to talk about an economic aspect. Tourism has interest not only because of social reasons, but the fact of making accessible the tourist resources is to improve the market share. Also, to attract customers, in many cases multi-client, because people, disabled people, usually travel with assistance. Tourism for disabled people or with problems to accessibility, there is a high number of people with disabilities without labor responsibility, so that they can travel in any time of the year. Also, it improves the image of destinies. The difference is not just because of the products, but because how are they enjoyable. To offer an image focused to any kind of people without any distinction, that helps the tourist development of the destinies. For us, accessibility is as important as how to enjoy emotionally the tourist destinies. It's not only physical barriers, but also there is a lack of products. There is a lack of experience for those disabled people. In this sense, we want to support the development of tourist products in order to boost the experiences for disabled people as other people without disabilities can enjoy. In Spain, last year's people with disability had many difficulties when planning holidays, as we said before. Fortunately, during the last year, this accessibility has been improved from our tourism industry. So we are now seeing the changes, especially in some destinies in where quality is one of the main principles. Currently, it's not only there's an awareness in the whole sector, which is a step forward for accessible tourism. Resources are more accessible. We have a lot of technical support and help, accessible hotels. Many companies have adapted their infrastructures, but however all these efforts, we have to recognize that we have a long way ahead. The goal is to make accessible in a short term all these resources to this segment of population. The General Director of Castilla y León talked about 3.8 million of disabled people in Spain. European inquiries establish that figures are not really exact, but in Europe we are talking around 27 million people with some disability, including people with long-term illnesses. So that would be around 34 million. If we are talking about the emitters markets for Spain, which is Germany, United Kingdom, and France, then this volume of tourists is about 58 million people. So the market volume is very important. That should not only add value to the awareness rising, but also to create all these kind of products and accessible experiences for all. Regarding to public administrations, the transfer of responsibilities to the autonomous regions means a lack of equality in the regulations, and it's true that all the autonomous regions have a lot of regulations about accessibility in transport and communication, but even so, when applicating these rules is not completely assumed in the global criteria, architectural rules. It's one of the tasks that we would like to afford. Of course, it's a complicated process because they have their own responsibility to regulate this aspect, but we would like to have a common point so that all of us we can access to this accessible label. Even if we have a long path to go, I would like to say that the State Secretary for Tourism in 2002 has already signed in 2002 an agreement that has been renewed in February 2012. When signing this agreement, ratifies the commitments, the jointly actuations of all the professionals in the public and private sector in tourism about accessibility questions. So what tourist resources are accessible when addressing to international markets. As I told you, our secretary has 33 offices all around the world. The main goal is to promote Spain as tourist destiny, but very often the question is what monuments, what cities, what hotels are accessible. One of the commitments from the Secretary is to go deeper in transmitting this information towards international tourists, not only to attract more tourists, but also to make their holidays easier and nicer and more comfortable. In this line, the State Secretary has looked for support by signing agreements with different associations. We made a decalogue of best practices. One of the criteria requested for the commitment with quality is that establishment have to be accessible and the information has to be true. This is one of the most important aspects to work on it. So it's not only to think that this local is accessible because it has a ramp, but it has to be certified and it has to accomplish all the characteristics that the professionals set as accessible. Our commitment is to carry on working in this sense to fulfill the new needs of the future tourists. To summarize, I would like to say that we are completely involved in making these requirements equal to transmit true information in an international level to international markets so that the coming tourist know where can he go, and the most important, to support the creation tourist products to be enjoyable for all, disabled people and not disabled people. Thank you very much.
You can hear me? Yes. Thank you, Elena, for kickstarting this session. I was sleeping, so I was thinking. So I will do my introduction now, and first of all, welcome all of you to this session on policies and strategies for accessible tourism. This is the fourth International Congress on Tourism for All, and I have had the pleasure of taking part in all of them, I think, at least 3 of them. And it's a pleasure for the organization that I represent, the EIDD Design for All Europe, to be a partner together with ENAT and the World Tourism Organization in this Congress. EIDD Design for All Europe is, as you can hear, a European organization, a design organization dealing with the concept of and the practice of design for all. We are a unique organization because we are bridging architecture, urban planning with design and social innovation. And that makes us unique and that makes us attractive. So during my presidency now for 6 years, we have tripled our membership, and now we have almost 40 member organizations in 23 countries in Europe. Design for All promotion centers, designers association, national platform organizations, and universities. A few words about design. We have good design, and we have, unfortunately, lots of examples of bad design. Design can exclude or it can include. The design of our built environments, services, and everyday objects, they can be excluding, and many times they are. Good design and bad design. If we all see examples of bad design. Most of us can adapt to bad design, but if we have a small problem, a physical problem or a sensorial problem, then the bad design gets really a problem, and sometimes a problem that can't be overcome. We are talking about design. Design for all as a design concept and approach represents a new paradigm, moving from the, in fact, non-existent average person to human diversity. Human diversity as a starting point for all decision-making and design processes. Design for all is a design response to major societal challenges, one of the biggest being enabling the largest number of people living independently and being able to take part of everything that the modern society offers. And to say it very shortly, the Design for All approach and methodology translates societal challenges and social obligations into creative opportunities. The topic of this Congress, Tourists for All, offers a perfect challenge for the Design for All approach and the kind of holistic thinking that Design for All represents. Policy making and strategic work on all levels are crucial. So that's why I think this session is very important about policies and strategies. And we have heard the first very good presentation, and we will have 3 more. And the speakers, they represent very interesting authorities. We are moving from the Ministry of Industry, Energy and Tourism to the European Commission and the World Tourism Organization, and then coming back to the Spanish Ministry of Education, Culture and Sports. So now, thank you very much, Elena. The next speaker will be Christa de Spiegler, and Christa joined the European Commission 10 years ago, and since 3 years she is working in the unit for tourism and cultural instruments in the DG Enterprise and Industry. And Christa will talk about the European Commission preparatory action for accessible tourism. You have the floor, Christa.
Thank you. Does it work? It's okay. It's okay. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for giving the European Commission for inviting us here and giving me the opportunity to share with you some views on accessibility and also give you some information on what we are actually doing at this point in time. When I received the invitation to this panel, 3 questions came to me. First of all, why Europe? What can be Europe's role or voice in this discussion? And then secondly, why is tourism such an important sector when it comes to accessibility? And third of all, how can Europe contribute? What can we do? So for the first question, why is there a European policy? First of all, there are 3 good reasons, I think. The first reason is that in November 2010, when the European Union adopted the disability strategy for 2010-2020, they firmly and officially recognized the fact that every person with a disability has the right to participate fully and equally in society and the economy, and this also implies tourism. Secondly, the European Union and its member states are signatories of the United Nations Charter for people with disabilities. This charter has accessibility as one of its main and general principles. And thirdly, as we speak, my colleagues in DG Justice are drafting the European Disability Act concerning goods and services in the Union, and this will also directly and indirectly affect tourism. The purpose of this Disability Act is not to add new obligations. It is merely to facilitate and to speed up the implementation of what was conceived with the UN Convention. It will benefit the internal market and ensure free movement of goods and services, and remove further all the barriers that would keep anyone from benefiting them fully. To my second question, why tourism? Why is tourism so important when it comes to accessibility? Well, apart from the human factor, whereas traveling and tourism has the incredible potential of contributing to every individual's well-being and the overall quality of life, there is, of course, the economic benefit. There is a huge untapped potential for SMEs who are not accessible. The figures say that about 20% of their customer base is lost. So this is a figure that speaks for itself. People with disabilities are loyal travelers. When they like it somewhere, when they feel welcome somewhere, they come back. They are frequent travelers. They tend to travel more often. They travel off season because they're not particularly looking for the high season with all its, I mean, when everything is crowded. So they look for maybe more peace. And they travel for longer periods. Accessibility is also ever more important because of our aging population. I mean, our population is graying, and there are more and more elderly people every year. 60 is now the new 40, they say, and I'm very happy. We can only look forward to something like that. It is said that the over 50s buy 40% more holidays than the under 30s. Eurostat figures show that the expenditure in tourism of the plus 65 has increased with 30% since 2006. So there is a huge potential there. There's also the important multiplication factor. People with disabilities do not travel alone. They travel in company. It is said that for every person with a disability, you can count on 2 to 2.8 travelers in total. Oops. What is accessible tourism about? Accessible tourism is about fostering innovation. Innovation is very important. Innovation does not come alone. If you foster innovation, you foster growth. It is about offsetting seasonality. We just said that people with disabilities travel off-season. Seasonality is a big issue in tourism. It is a huge problem, and we're making a lot of efforts to mend it. So whatever help we can get from accessible tourism is very welcome. It is simply about attracting more tourists. At European level, we are doing a lot of work to attract more people. We have huge promotional campaigns in the BRICS countries, in the new emerging economies. We are trying to facilitate the visa procedures so that not only safety issues and security is taken into account, but also the economic potential of travelers. Making tourism accessible is just making the tourism offer better. It's as simple as that. Europe today is still the #1 tourism destination, but we cannot sit back and watch what's going to happen, because the competition is coming up and they're doing it a very good job. So we have to take care and make sure that we improve the quality in every way that we can. And it's also, of course, about increasing the competitive edge of companies and SMEs. All this together are benefits from accessible tourism. Accessibility to us, as we see it, is about the software. It's about the human aspect, the human interaction. It's about how we welcome people, how we acknowledge them, and how we look after them. It's also about the hardware. It's about thinking before acting, thinking out of the box. As Finn mentioned, the design for all in this aspect, I think, is very important. If we do it well and we have the right combination, then accessibility is good for everyone. Now, what are we doing at this point in time from DG Enterprise side? 2 years ago, we received a request from the European Parliament to do something about accessibility. The objectives of our task were to raise awareness, disseminate and reward best practices, improve skills, foster innovative solutions, promote more accessible services and facilities, and find incentives and reward for accessibility efforts. We have an annual budget for these actions of 1 million per year. Now, last year was our first year. What we did is that before, we tried to think before acting. So we wanted to have an educated basis for future actions. We wanted to get evidence of the indisputable benefits that accessibility can have in a tourism business model. And we want to get SMEs to untap the potential that is hidden in accessible tourism. So to this end, we launched 3 studies. We want to get a full picture, a 360 degrees assessment of the situation. So we asked contractors to look at the demand side, at who is traveling, when are they traveling, why are they traveling, what keeps them from traveling, when they travel, what do they see as barriers, what would they like to see changed, what is their economic impact and what could be their economic impact, what is accessible tourism worth to them. On the other hand, we are looking at the supply side. We want to see how much accessible services are already available in the field. We want to know why certain entrepreneurs choose to be accessible and why others may not choose to, what they see as barriers, what would help them to change their mind, whether they would look for funding, whether they think the efforts are just not worth it or the efforts are too big or take too much time or too much resources. And then thirdly, we are looking at the skills because we think that skills are very important in this area. Not only the people in the first line who have direct contact with people with disabilities, but also the back office, also the designers, the managers, who may not have a day-to-day experience of people with disabilities and what this means, but to cover all the areas of the chain, actually. So we expect the results from these studies early next year. We will normally organize a conference where we will combine the results of all 3, and then hopefully we will come to some recommendations for future policy, which we will then start to implement in the 3rd year of the preparatory action. This year, 2013, is the 2nd year, and what we are doing now is that since we cannot build on the results yet of the studies that are being carried out, we have foreseen a small budget for communication to raise awareness, because this is also very important. But we are also preparing now a call for proposals. The budget will be 950,000 euros. It will come out in the weeks to come. And we will look for existing good practices, and we will encourage them. And we will encourage them to join forces with other competitors, but also with other services. We want them to create a lot more networks. We want to involve a lot more key actors in the process. We want them to come up with a dynamic approach based on a pragmatic analysis and present a full tourism experience, create an accessible tourism environment. What we thought was every accessible destination or every accessible service is one extra. So every project that we can help on the way is one gains. I just brought two pages with results from the Eurobarometer survey that was carried out last year with results presented in March this year. So what you can see from there, amongst others, is that when people are asked that what would make them go back to the same place for their holidays, that 7% say that it would be the accessible facilities for people with special needs. So, I mean, this is a figure that should not be neglected. When we look at another question as to how satisfied were you with accessible services. So we see the blue part is those that were satisfied totally or partially, and then the red part is those that were partially or totally unsatisfied. I mean, there's a lot of ground already covered, but you can see that there is still important work to be done. And I mean, when you look at the potential that we can create when we invite more people from BRICS countries or emerging economies. I mean, these figures can translate in important economic benefits. I would like to leave you maybe with a small message. I brought with me a video. I spoke to you about the promotional campaign that we carry out in these BRICS countries, and I brought it with me, so it should be on show somewhere around the premises here. I really invite you to have a look at it when you have the occasion. It's breathtakingly beautiful, and the title is Europe Ready Whenever You Are. And I think the more we make our tourism accessible, the more we can show people that we are really ready for them. Thank you for your attention.
Can I say, yes, just want to say thank you, Krista, and I would like to introduce the third speaker as well. It's a pleasure to have on board Marina Diotalevi. I hope I pronounce it rightly.
It's not bad.
It's okay, anyway. Head of the Unit for Ethical and Social Dimensions of Tourism at the World Tourism Organization. And Marina has been working for the World Tourism Organization since 1986. It's hard to believe, but anyway, and is now responsible for coordinating the work of the World Committee on Tourism Ethics. For me, as being a sociologist and philosopher by training, it will be very interesting to hear you. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Before starting, I would like to thank ONCE Foundation for inviting the World Tourism Organization to be part in these countries. And I want to congratulate the foundation on its 25th anniversary. For those of you who doesn't know the UN WTO is a specialized United Nations organization in charge with the promotion and development of responsible development, sustainable development and accessible development in tourism. It is formed by 62 member states and territories, and we have more than 400 members in the operating system. Its head office in Spain, in Madrid. It has been there since 1975. As you have listened, our Secretary General in its recorded message, the exponential growth of tourism in the last decades has brought about enormous benefits in terms of job creations, in economic sectors, in poverty reduction and intercultural dialogue. Last year, we reached the record figure of 1 billion tourists, international tourists, in only 1 year, and despite of the economic crisis. and without taking into account national tourism, that would multiply the figure by 5. By 2030, we estimate that 1.8 billion tourists will cross the borders. Despite these positive figures, we have listened and we have seen that not all the segments of the society enjoy equally tourist destinations, tourist attractions, and tourist services. Disabled people are those that have most difficulties in terms of access. The World Ethical Code, a base document of the organization, in its Article 7, emphasizes the importance of accessibility and the fact that all must have the right to enjoy tourism without exclusion or restriction because of disability. World WTO recognizes that facilitating traveling to disabled people or people with special needs is a key element in any responsible tourist policy. What is accessible tourism? There are many definitions. Some of them are very good. We have listened our colleague from the European Commission. She has mentioned one, but the real pending subject is the ability to reach an official definition guaranteed by the United Nations, and I propose to work together the WTO, organizations of disabled people, and representatives of tourist organizations in order to achieve an internationally recognized definition of accessible tourism. Most of the 1 billion people of the world population, 15% of the world population that have some kind of disability, face difficult problems and barriers when traveling. Their potential as tourists is untapped. The lack of political inclusion, economical and social and cultural inclusions of these people makes more difficult this situation, particularly in developing countries and emerging countries. On the other hand, there is a low level of satisfaction because the offer does not include a universal accessibility system. There is a lack of information related to products, accessible products and services, and lack of knowledge in terms of personnel on how to deal with these people. Accessible tourism is not only a right, but is also an opportunity for everybody, because it benefits all the tourist sector and the society equally. To face these challenges and opportunities, we must count on more political willingness and clear strategies to integrate universal accessibility in tourism. The WTO declared for the first time the right to tourism without discrimination in 1985 in the Declaration of Manila on World Tourism, and ever since the WTO has promoted accessible tourism for everybody through different declarations and recommendations adopted in our General Assembly and aimed at all our member states. With the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Disabled People in 2007, the importance of access to facilities and services, cultural, sport and tourist services has been reinforced in the Article 30 on accessibility. Our conviction that was signed by 135 countries, and it was ratified by the 103 countries, protects and ensures the total enjoyment of human rights, of total freedoms, and establishes a global action platform. Following the recommendations of the Convention of the United Nations, the General Assembly of the WTO adopted in 2009 the Declaration on the Facilitation of tourist travels, and recommended a close cooperation with Association of Disabled People to make universal accessibility in tourism a reality. In order to face these problems systematically, WTO signed in 2011 a framework agreement of trilateral cooperation with the ONCE Foundation, the European Network for Accessible Tourism, and in 2012 we also signed another agreement, a collaboration agreement with the ACS Foundation, including a wide range of activities. We updated the resolution Tourism for All, adopted in 2005, and we also introduced the elements of the Convention of the United Nations, and we introduced the concept of design for all. The new updated text will be adopted this year in our General Assembly in August in Las Cataratas at the Victoria Falls, and after that it will be disseminated to all the national tourism administrations in the member states so that they can take proper measures. In terms of awareness-raising events, we have organized sessions on competitive advantages on accessible tourism in January this year at FITUR, the European Tourism Fair, Spanish Fair Trade. We are organizing an event with the government of Italy in February in the International Tourism Fair Trade of Milan, and we are going to organize an international congress next year in San Marino. This is an accessibility challenge in the spring of next year. However, the main activity to carry out by all the members is undoubtedly the preparations of a manual on accessible tourism that will be published at the end of this year. We intend it to be a useful tool for the stakeholders to understand the needs in the tourism sector in terms of accessibility, the competitive advantages of tourism for all, as well as the ways of application. The contributions of the experts of the ONCE Foundation and INET and the experts of ACS foundations, on the other hand, will be complemented in the development of this manual. ONCE foundations and INET have emphasized the complexity of accessible tourism, trying to approach it from the final user point of view and to include policies and markets to make it possible. ACS Foundations has tried to explain how to make accessible facilities in the building environment, especially in places in human, cultural and historical heritage places. We emphasize the accessibility chain in tourism, in which there shouldn't be breakdowns in any of its changes: transport, accommodations, the main attraction sites, leisure activities, and urban environment or rural environment. We insist in the economic repercussion of accessible tourism, and they suggest recommendations to create accessible destinations according to the principles of design for all. On the other hand, ACS Foundations analyzes the synergies the public-private partnerships within the framework of the universal accessibility through good practices comprising historical cities sector. We include an example of good practices in Avila, the architectural and historical heritage, parks and gardens, urban transport systems and railway systems, airports, projects that make the natural areas accessible, and they also include professional training for the sector and training for the technicians and the staff involved in designing and adapting tourist environments, such as architects and engineers. And finally, they also include the important chapter on cooperation, international cooperation, mainly at municipal level in South America. I would like to thank the two teams for their excellent work. On the one hand, to Jesus Hernandez Galán from ONCE Foundations and his colleagues from Via Libre, and to Ivar Ambrose from INAT, and on the other hand to Francisco Menor Monasterio, manager of ACS Foundation, and to the group of experts whose names are displayed on the slide. Thank you very much. I haven't finished. This was just the thank chapter. In relation to the policy, the accessible tourism policies, I had some keywords. The WTO makes some recommendations to its member states based on the priorities of implementations of the United Nations conventions and on the conclusions of the projects carried out until the date. The national tourism administrations have a special role when facilitating and coordinating the action of the different stakeholders to boost policies, strategies in accessible tourism in the public and private sector, in tourist destinations, and in organizations of disabled peoples. This is a prerequisite, and it would be difficult to ensure the functioning of the chain of accessible tourism. We have an example from Italy, and we have to establish specific laws in accessible tourism, as in Argentina, or finally to integrate tourism in the general legislation on accessibility, as in the United States. The application of the implementation of the legislations needs regulations and standardization processes of tourist services and products, and we must avoid self-classification, which are not very useful to the user. It is also necessary to develop indexes of parameters to break down barriers and for universal accessibility. Awareness raising on tourism is a cornerstone in the process, as the society and the destinations have to develop awareness on accessibility and have to break down attitudinal barriers that limit it. We need a coherent awareness sensibilization with specific actions that could reach all the layers of the society, and you also need promotional activities and communication activities that could reach to the whole of the society. Each action in universal accessibility must be subject to the direct consultancy of disabled people and to the awareness of their real needs. The job placement programs are necessary if we want to achieve accessibility in tourist products and services. Legislators must ensure guarantee disabled people the conditions necessary for their integration and their active participation in jobs and in life, social, economic, and cultural life on equal conditions. And finally, the accessibility policies in tourism must be based on follow-up mechanisms in terms of responsibility and accountability of all the stakeholders involved, especially in the public sector, in order to ensure the political commitment and the better governance and transparency. I also have a slide on strategies, but I'm going to skip it because of lack of time. This is a short summary. And I finish. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Marina, and congratulations to your great work so far. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our fourth and last speaker, Pilar Barraca Ramos. She works at the Director General of Fine Arts in the Spanish Ministry of Education, Culture and Sports. And just like the previous speakers, Pilar has an impressive CV, and I will not read it, but it includes strategic work with national museums and being in charge of a number of European programs related to the area of tourism. The floor is yours.
Gracias.
Thank you. First of all, thank you to the ONCE Foundation for giving us the opportunity of participating in this important forum about tourism and accessibility. I am going to talk about the cultural aspect of tourism and accessibility around it. Culture is a strategic sector when developing economic in the countries, referring to artistic creation and to the cultural heritage, but also as a transforming social agent. Because of this, to create a method to access culture is a real challenge. It's not only about punctual factors, but as the other speakers were talking about, is about crossing aspects to be coordinated. It's about an immediate action. It's not. We have to think about all the aspects guiding to this accessibility. In this sense, I have to say that the European Commission has started several working groups to define best practices and to think about the current situation, to define who are the cultural receptors, or to establish an analysis of the needs, or to offer culture, or to try to include social integration. All aspects around cultural tourism. In this sense, the management of the cultural heritage and the different manifestations of the culture of all populations. Also, it helps to preserve our cultural heritage. There are several programs to promote a better access to culture and to tourism of quality as a leisure process. One of those programs responding to this cultural awareness, allowing this process, one of them is the cultural itineraries. Up to now, they weren't treated as a fundamental tool in the cultural tourism, but nowadays they are really recognized not only as a tourist product, but also as a system to implement culture in general terms. In this sense, we should talk about accessibility to the whole system. So maybe we should think about the need of a detailed study surrounding the cultural itinerary. These kind of programs are very necessary to balance a global society. In fact, the design of these itineraries is very important to develop a social and economic capital. The itinerary is done when we plan a travel. We always make a route because it's done around different factors, around the landscape, different landscapes. So there is a component, a cultural component, material and immaterial component. In fact, the role of the Spanish government is very important because through the different ministries, different strategies have been already developed to implement these programs. The Ministry of Culture has boosted the creation of an office to develop cultural destinies, which goal is to boost the participation of different public entities and private ones. Not only this, but his goal is to analyze all the factors involved in the itinerary, the environment, and the population around. Among these strategic plans in culture, we should think about some points. On the one hand is to develop the cultural heritage, but also the policies and also the strategies to be developed by those policies. So we have to define whether these policies are only cultural or not. Of course, they are not only cultural, even if the itinerary is cultural and is called Cultural One, and that is part of culture and has always been treated from a tourist point of view, we have to value also the environmental programs, even agriculture ones. All that surrounds our way of life to be defined as culture, not only, and it's part of the culture industry, and of course it's part of tourism. The offer of these cultural itineraries is focused to recognize regional and cultural values from the populations to respond a clear demand. We don't want to lose tradition. We don't want in terms of just economic development.
And the need for preservation. We appreciate a very clear message. We have to take advantage of the technology to modify attitudes, but we don't have to disdain professional trades. Access that must be offered during an itinerary must not be limited to the visitor in terms of quality. It must be offered to all the stakeholders involved in the process. The success offered by the cultural itinerary is global, is not limited to the existence of events or festivals. It involves all the factors existing in the environment. On this itinerary, we can find material and non-material heritage, museums, monuments, festivals, cultural industry, craftsmanship. Each aspect has its own expression and its own peculiarity that enables, in different geographies and in different seasons of the year, a different perception of a cultural itinerary. The access of all these itinerary, it's a challenge we must value. We are just at the beginning of it, and it's a big social and cultural potential. In the process, to prepare the process of access to potential visitors interested in these itineraries requires preparation of different aspects. Teams of specialized people and the implication of the society on the itinerary. The use of a methodology, of a standardized methodology, and then the budget allocation, which is very important, agreements with companies and society affected. It's a very active participation of all the components and aspects. That means sharing knowledge, sharing experiences, sharing problems, and sharing benefits. Social and cultural benefits that will result in economic benefits. This is what we are looking for. This is what we want to boost with these programs. The accessibility must be total, must be all-inclusive, must include disadvantaged layers of the society. It must include all the elements, and it must involve all the citizens, all the people in the area, and we have to propose a cultural integration and social cohesion without obstacles. To different layers of the society, especially disadvantaged layer of society. In the search of a high-quality tourism, an itinerary means the application of different aspects that develop total access to culture. That is criticism, which will always be constructive, that helps us to delimitate the parameters on which we have to take actions. There are other issues to be tackled, industries related to the itinerary, the hotel infrastructure, the signposting on a facade that could be attractive. When I arrived at the hotel, I could see there is signposting of the Santiago Pilgrim's Way, which drew my attention. It is very important to boost publicity and dissemination and active participation in all the events all along the cultural itinerary, which offers the possibility of intercultural exchange. We must take actions in education, in the disseminating training, and in identity values, and in elaboration of good practices needed to build up a dissemination systems elaborated by public and private entities. We must analyze the public to become aware of those who don't have access to culture. In this case, it is important to have a clear methodology to create and maintain an itinerary. The continuous updating of the itinerary and the impact studies on social aspects, environmental and economic aspects. To conclude, the cultural itinerary is an axis on which cultural economic activities are based, and we have to permit to enable all layers of the society to have access, free access to the heritage, we have to boost active participation of the citizens that contribute to a better dissemination. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Pilar. I think we will be on time. I would like to extend the thanks to all our 4 brilliant speakers. I will say again, excuse me for not being part of the game from the beginning, but I don't think that matters much. I have a question. Shouldn't it be obvious for everyone by now that Tourists for All is a winning concept, that Tourists for All pays off? If I had one wish for the future, it would be this. For future policy development and strategic action, it would be this. Tourists for All means tourists for all, not tourists for disabled people or even accessible tourism. It's about creating services, creating the best offers for everybody and every soul. And I'm convinced that the best offers will be on the winning side in the long run. So thank you very much once again, and we are exactly on time. Thank you. I have one recommendation. Don't miss a morning session tomorrow about economic incentives, where we will have some interesting speakers, among them Peter Neumann. He will do an excellent presentation of the economic benefits of Tourists for All. Thank you again.